In 1983, an Indian mystic built a self-sustaining city in the Oregon desert, drawing in thousands of American disciples and openly defying Western religious norms. Osho rejected the traditional ascetic ideal, accumulating massive wealth that created a jarring, intentional contrast with the surrounding rural landscape. A fleet of 93 customized luxury cars became the loudest symbol of this philosophy, paraded daily through the commune's dusty roads. This fusion of Eastern mysticism and aggressive materialism made the movement a high-value target for the American media establishment, who saw an opportunity to expose a fraud on a national stage. ABC News sent Mike Woff, a veteran interrogator with a reputation for reducing powerful politicians to tears under the glare of studio lights. Mike entered the compound and immediately set the terms of engagement, telling Osho he wasn't there for a polite interview, but for an investigation. This was a lethal, orchestrated ambush designed by a trained specialist to dismantle a spiritual leader's reputation in real time. Mike opened with a direct strike, accusing Osho of lacking all shame and operating as a fraud who conned millions from his followers. Osho controlled the pacing by sitting in total silence for 2 minutes. When he finally spoke, he asked Mike how long he had been a journalist. Mike boasted it had been 15 years. Osho asked how many people's truth he had exposed. When Mike claimed hundreds, Osho smiled and noted that Mike had spent 15 years cleaning other people's trash, then asked when he would clean his own. Notice how Osho intercepts the momentum of the question. He doesn't absorb the blow or defend his character. He transfers the pressure of the moral defense back onto the journalist's own history, forcing the attacker to account for his own inner state. The aggressive rhythm of the interview shifted instantly. For the first time, the journalist was the one being observed, and the room went silent. Mike regrouped, pointing to the 93 cars as proof that Osho's spiritual claims were invalid. Osho responded by asking Mike how many pairs of shoes he owned. When Mike admitted to having 4 or 5 simply because he liked them, Osho replied that he simply liked cars. Then he targeted the logic behind the question. If poverty was the only requirement for heaven, he argued, the most impoverished places on earth would be filled exclusively with saints. This move pulls the rug out from under the accusation. By identifying the unspoken rule Mike was trying to enforce, Osho made the existence of the cars irrelevant to the core question of his validity. The material critique evaporated because the hidden cultural bias supporting it had been exposed and discarded. Mike launched his most prepared attack, bringing up the sex guru label and the controversial idea of achieving enlightenment through intimacy. Osho looked Mike in the eyes and asked if he had ever been in love. When Mike admitted he had, Osho asked if his eyes were open or closed during the experience. Mike answered, closed. Osho described that moment as a brief, powerful suspension of the ego and time, the very essence of what he was teaching his followers to expand. He argued that understanding a natural human impulse is a more stable path than fleeing from it, as suppression often leads back to the very thing being avoided. The tabloid scandal had been pulled out of the headlines and into the realm of universal human experience. By finding a common ground in the journalist's own life, Osho transformed a scandalous accusation into an undeniable reality. The scheduled 1-hour ambush turned into a 4-hour session where the initial hostility completely dissolved. As he left, Mike admitted to Osho that while he had come to expose the guru, he was the one who ended up exposed. This outcome was the result of a consistent psychological strategy. Osho refused to occupy a defensive position. Instead, he treated every accusation as a reflective surface, sending the inquiry back to its source. Mike eventually realized he had spent the afternoon answering for his own worldviews, forced to confront the very hypocrisies he usually targeted in others. Before Mike left, Osho left him with a final thought. Truth is not proven, it is lived. This encounter provides a blueprint for handling conflict beyond simple debate. Ultimately, the interview demonstrates that real power in an argument comes from the ability to expose the flawed premises of a critic, making a defensive posture unnecessary.